Okay, so we're here today with applicator and Mikk Maal from Comistar legal firm in Estonia, and we're going to speak about some legal aspects of ICOs, of how to make sure that you can sell your tokens and to be safe, and any other tips and hacks which are already available in ICO world. We'll be all discussing this, and then we will go into some specific tricks which Mikk is going to share with us. And basically, we'll discuss how to run a successful ICO and not to get in trouble. All ICOs start with legal first. So before you get this covered, there is not much sense of moving any forward to token economics or marketing or development. So legal comes first, and let's have Mikk to share how his company has been taking successful ICOs to the market for 2 years now. And later we'll discuss how is it being handled in Estonia and why. So please, Mikk, tell us a little bit more. How did you get involved in ICO world and why?
Hey, thank you for having me on. So, yeah, I mean, we got involved, I guess, when Estonia started to introduce more clear frameworks for ICOs, clear guidelines how to handle the ICOs. And of course, also when Estonia introduced the very specific cryptocurrency licenses, and then it was kind of a no-brainer because my own interest has been in cryptos for quite some time. So yeah, I also blog about cryptos and I've written a book about cryptocurrencies. So that was kind of the natural progression of our company to focus on blockchain companies. So yeah, and that's what we have been doing. And because the industry is booming, right, then it definitely has been a right decision to make for us.
Yeah, it is the right time, and it is very interesting. So let's discuss a little bit more why so many businesses want to establish a company for an ICO in Estonia. And I know that you've been taking several of our customers to get their legal side covered, and they have selected Estonia as their domicile. Why is that happening today?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much time do you have, but if we to give a little bit of context, then of course I think the countries, they are competing with each other for the foreign investment talent, entrepreneurs, like perhaps like companies are, and well, if you have a big market, like US or China, then they have so big domestic markets, so it's kind of a no-brainer for an entrepreneur. They just want to have a piece of that. For Estonia, you have to be attractive. You have to, find your niche, and you have to be somehow, let's say, you have to stand out to attract these companies. And Estonia is definitely taking the path of being the, how to say, the digital nation. So, and the big reason why the ICOs are coming to Estonia, not only ICOs, it's also all kinds of online companies. Actually, it's because of the e-residency program that Estonia has. So the e-residency program essentially is, well, you can apply it online. You get your Estonian digital ID, and you can use that ID to establish Estonian company online and manage it online. So it takes out a lot of bureaucracy. So it makes it easy to get started. So the barrier of entry is really small. And that's appealing for the ICO companies as well. And because Estonia has made these kind of advancements in technology, it means Estonia is also very friendly for all the new technologies. So so yeah, that I guess that's one thing. You just it's easy to get started. It's fast. We have several clients that have switched to Estonia from Gibraltar or Malta because it takes so much time there, and they come to Estonia because it's smoother process. And yeah, of course, and also because Estonia has these guidelines for ICOs, and you can do your utility token offerings here. Of course, you can do security tokens as well, but that's a bit more complex, and we can discuss it a bit later. So I think these are the kind of the main considerations that Estonia has that good reputation today. And if one company has a good ICO in Estonia, then the second one will come and have it as well. And the latest statistics show that Estonia has the most ICOs per capita. Of course, Estonia is so small; it's only 1.3 million people, but it shows something.
Yeah, the numbers are impressive in the ratio, but overall, in general, what's happening with legal question for ICOs in the world? Like, what should we expect? What should we get ready for? Or maybe there is going to be something easing up, like maybe more ICOs will be able to come to market. What's the trend? How is it changing now?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wish I knew how to answer to. I guess, of course, there's a lot of attention in the US and on the SEC, right? And there has been a lot of talk about the SEC. Well, they say that a lot of utility tokens today are actually security tokens because they have some security token elements to them. It means that these tokens, they provide the owners some kind of monetary benefit from the start. You buy it in hope of making some kind of profit. So I guess the biggest trend is the security token market, which may be emerging now, and I think a lot of industry insiders think that it will emerge, and it's kind of the natural way of the industry to develop because you need some kind of regulations to make the market better. Because if you look at today's ICO market, then of course, if you have some innovation and there's a lot of new things, then you always have the good guys and the bad apples as well. And of course, there has been a lot of scams, and that's kind of the thing what people are worrying about. And there has been a lot of investors that have been hurt by that because they are investing into projects that aren't really doing anything, or they don't plan to do anything. It's just they're raising money, so they're doing scams, but I don't think it's that big part. I think there's a lot more good, and I think it will get tougher for ICO companies to raise capital because the competition is well, there's so many projects that want to raise capital through an ICOs, right? And it's quite difficult to stand out if you don't have a very good product. And also, which what is important, I think, is now you need more money to have a successful ICO compared to before. But it's also it's a good thing because investors are getting smarter, and I think the whole industry is getting better. And if you look at the numbers, then more money is raised through ICOs than ever before. So you can't say that it's cooling down. It's not, but it's just tougher because there are so many companies. From legal side, I think the countries will introduce some kind of frameworks, and they try to sort it out. But it's quite difficult to do because it takes a lot of, how to say, the genie is out of the bottle, right? And you can't kill the whole industry because there's so much money in it now. And I don't think people want to kill it, but I think they want to regulate it. But the question is, which countries regulate it in a way that it's attractive? And you see Malta is doing a lot of good work in that end, and Switzerland is always a good option as well. And of course, Estonia, who is doing a good thing. So yeah, I think there will be regulations, and I think the kind of direction is to the security tokens more, but how exactly, I'm not sure. And I think a lot of investors especially want to know because it's it will kind of help them decide to where they put their money into. But I think people are slowly getting ready for the more regulated markets, and that's where it's going to go.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. So speaking of regulations in different countries, we've been looking at SEC, and they're not going fast or fast enough or too fast, or the ICOs are expecting them to move faster. What would be the reason? Why does it take them so long to set up proper regulation to give everyone an understanding of how to govern the ICO? I mean, I've always been thinking that there should be enough of people and money interested in something to make things happen. and we apparently see that there is enough of money interested in creating clear regulations for an ICO in the United States, and that still is not happening. What could be the reason behind that, like from your point of view?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that much about the regulations in the United States to have a very sophisticated opinion on that, nor I have ever had any experience with the SEC. But if I had to guess, then these institutions, they're really big institutions, and you always have people. Well, you have people that go go along with the new innovations, and they understand, and they want to see things progressing, and they understand the technology. And there's also the other side of people that don't understand it, and they want to ban it, or yeah, I guess it's the right word. They want to ban it or see this industry to die. So I think there are too many people with different interests, and there are people that don't understand the technology, and there are people that understand the technology. But in order to move on, you need to have some kind of you need to have some consensus on that. But it's really hard to achieve that if you have people with so different understandings of this technology. So I think that's the main reason why the SEC is not moving forward. And also I think it's the US law is very complex. It's very complex, so it's not easy to make the changes without changing 20 or 100 other laws as well. So there's I think that's the main reason. It's not that easy, and it's really complex thing to do. So I really don't think there will be progress. Well, 2019 maybe in the United States to have some clear kind of framework, but I'm not sure. I don't know enough, and I haven't read that much about how these things are going in the US to have a very good answer to that question.
Okay, thank you for your opinion, because it's very interesting to hear someone experienced in legal for ICO side. Mikk, so for everyone who starts an ICO, what would be something you would recommend not to do? Like, what's the most common mistake besides the one of trying to save money on lawyers? What's the biggest mistake an ICO can make in a legal question before they launch?
It's a good question. I would the biggest mistake. Well, I would say we haven't seen, because when the ICOs they try or they start, I guess the biggest mistake is not to comply at all, right? Not do anything and just go and do it without knowing whether you're doing anything or whether you're doing it correctly. And or from the legal perspective, the biggest mistake is, of course, to do some kind of scam, because that's a real threat for your freedom. Let's say it like that. But when the clients come, they usually the process is pretty standardized in a sense that the first thing they need to have is to okay, you can look into the business model as well and see whether they need actually some kind of licenses, or they are operating in a regulated fields, which may bring some additional regulatory demands on their business. But usually, it's we need to analyze the white paper and see whether the token has any security token elements. So that's one thing, because people usually want to issue utility tokens. So we look at whether the token pays any dividends or represents an actual share in the company, gives any voting rights, and then we give them advice perhaps if it should be changed. And if it should be changed, then well, how can it be changed, if it can be changed at all? Perhaps some kind of function of the token has to be completely loose, kind of. It can't be used in that way. So the white paper analysis is the first thing that the clients do, and it also includes the tax questions, the VAT questions, the KYC, and this is kind of the basis of the work and basis of going forward from the legal side. So yeah, I think that's pretty standard, and we haven't. I guess the biggest mistakes are done by the projects that don't get any kind of legal help. So Yeah, and they don't come to us at all. So I don't know what mistakes they have done in that sense. But yeah, I mean the white paper is the main thing, and the token elements are, it's the main thing that we analyze. And of course, sometimes or well, most often than not, projects also they require to have a token sale agreements and privacy policies and terms and conditions. But all these things are pretty standardized in today's market. So not everybody need them. They maybe have them already. I don't know from where, but they maybe have drafted them themselves. So yeah, it's really hard to say which is the big mistake. We try to avoid them, and I guess the mistakes that have been made have gone past us, and perhaps yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So there must be like a checklist of must-haves, like what to do for an ICO to succeed, to become a success. Like what kind of input can you bring for an ICO to make sure that it raises the money and then the product goes to market? Like what are the must-haves for that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure probably how to answer to that from your perspective as well, because you helped so many projects. But yeah, I think in today's market, the essential thing is probably to have some kind of MVP, right? You need to have some product, because the investors are quite skeptical about projects that only have the white paper. So of course you need to have a team. You need to have a socially credible team. Otherwise, it's quite complicated to raise any kind of capital. Because this crypto industry, you see so many people flocking into the industry, and there are people that don't have any kind of prior business experience, and they are hoping to raise, let's say, 20, 30, 50 million euros. And well, if you don't have any prior business experience, then you definitely don't have any experience in managing that amount of money. And when you think about product development, done by group of people that have a lot of money but don't have any experience, then you can already expect a lot of inefficiency on how the money is used and so on. So the team is, and the experience of the team is, of course, vital. And I also think one of the things that many ICO projects at first they don't realize is that they already need some capital to get started. Because in theory, the ICO is done to raise capital, but you also need capital to raise capital, at least some money, because first of all, you need to pay for the service provider that help you launch the ICO, but also because the market or the landscape is quite competitive, then you need some capital to raise and market your ICO. So you need seed funding, and I think the quality of the seed fund or the investor that gives you the seed money and the connections that he or she can bring is also crucial going forward, because all the, let's say if you have a private round and you're raising money in your private round, it means you already have the seed funding before. Let's assume that then these investors in the private round, they are looking who was your investor in the seed round. They want to see strong investors. They want to see someone else believing in your project. So it's about network, and well, if it's about network, it's about relationships. So you need to have good relationships, and if you have good relationships, then it's a lot easier to launch your ICO. So yeah, I think that these all kind of fundamentals need to be met, and the business has to make sense. The use of blockchain needs to make sense. The industry where you want to operate it has to make sense. There has to be, a clear, and also the token has to have very clear functions, in a sense that investors want to see how this token will have demand in the future. So there has to be, the token has to be well designed. Yeah, I guess these are the. Of course, you have to have the legal side done correctly as well. So I guess these are the things that I would focus on.
Yeah, thank you. Mick, speaking of seed money and how to get started, what is the must-have amount of money to kick off the legal process?
Legal process, well, it depends, I guess, but you need to have for legal, let's say, 10 to 15,000 euros is something that you should have. It depends, of course, in which country you do it. In Switzerland, it's a lot more. But I guess in Estonia, that's the range where you have to, what you have to prepare yourself for. And of course, a lot of ICO projects, they propose that maybe you would take our own token, the token that we issue. Of course, it's always something that you have to look at case by case. But if you look at the statistics, that 9 out of 10 startups fail, and when you look at return on the ICOs for investors, for example, or the token holders, then it almost always flatlines today after the ICO. And it's not because the token is bad, it's because the market is irrational, right? The investors, they hope to invest now and take 10x profits the next month, and it's totally irrational. You're investing into a startup, it doesn't work like that. But it also means that, if the startup doesn't succeed, then for the service provider, it's a huge risk to take. And so therefore we usually prefer not to take the tokens that the company wants to issue, but of course it's always negotiable.
So that's the good news for some of promising ICOs and startups. And I'm sure that once enough people will watch this video, you will be pinged a lot by this kind of offering. But yeah, you mentioned the range from 10 to 50,000. How does is the price being combined? What are the factors that the final pricing depends on? Like, what should the ICOs be prepared for?
10 to 15, not 50. That's too big of a range. But 15, yeah. Well, of course, it depends on the white paper a lot, because it can, the white paper can be 20 pages, but it can also be 100 pages, and I don't know, maybe perhaps 200 pages for some. I haven't seen any in that. But anyway, that's something we kind of evaluate the work, how much it takes from us. And yeah, I guess if the question was how it is structured, the white paper is almost 50% of the cost, the analysis of the white paper, and other documents are, and by the way, the project, they don't have to take the whole package. They can only have the white paper analyzed, or they can only have the investor agreements, right? They don't have to take everything from one place. It's not mandatory. But the white paper analysis, I guess it's about 50%, almost 40 to 50% of the total cost, and all other documentation is added on top of that piece by piece. So yeah, the investor agreement, maybe you pay for 3,000 euros, right? But it also depends what you want to have in there, because you may have different requirements and so on. So it's yeah, it's the white paper analysis. It's the main thing when it comes to pricing, and then it comes down to the complexity of the white paper, how much work it requires.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, 15,000 euros, it's not too much. So if you're planning to raise like $20 million or $50 million, and you're trying to save 10 to 15K on legal services, that's probably not the smartest move to have. So definitely, if we're risking our freedom or risking such huge volume of funds, millions of dollars, everyone totally should go and talk to lawyers first and to initiate this kind of process. So the price is extremely low for such a high risk business. So so far, maybe there has been some, like the most unusual case, or do the most ICOs have pretty much a pattern of setting them up and taking them through legal compliance? Or maybe there have been some very interesting cases which you could share with us, or it's still a pattern?
Oh, yeah, it's I don't know how to evaluate which case is interesting, right? It's quite, because all projects, they're different. So but from the legal side, I guess it's quite hard. It's quite hard to tell. I would even say that they're all interesting, but they're. I guess the most interesting for us now is because we're helping a project to a security token offering. So that's interesting because that's for the regulated market, and that's different. So I would go with that and say, because there you have to do the prospectus and you have to follow the directives that are a lot more complex and demanding. So yeah, I would say that security token offering is something that's very, very interesting, and I also think it's something that will give us a lot of experience and practical knowledge for the future as well. So I would go with that.
Speaking of security token, since most of issued tokens today, despite that they call themselves utility, still are securities, there is a big question how to regulate those, how to take these kind of tokens through legal compliance. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Could you please describe what's the situation for security tokens, how to get them through regulations, and how to have properly governed ICO for a security token?
Yeah, well, it's a very new industry, so there hasn't been many security tokens done anywhere in the world yet. But of course, it's emerging, and when we talk about Estonia, then there isn't any special regulations. They're treated as securities. And I think it's also one important thing to see which countries simplify the security token offerings in a way that it becomes a no-brainer for the entrepreneur to go to that country. And it's not only a question of which countries do that, it's also questions which countries can do that. Because, for example, as Estonia is a member state of the European Union, then it's not that easy that you can make all the decisions and make it as you want to make it, because you also have to take into account the EU directives. But it depends. There are exemptions, and in Estonia, for example, of course, you first have to. You can already start. You don't even have to make the company for that, because the prospectus takes time. But you have to draft the prospectus, and you have to register it with the Estonian Financial Supervision Authority, and then they can, deny or accept the prospectus, and they have like 10 days for that. So yeah, I mean, the first thing is to work on the prospectus, and if you start to work on the prospectus, you also need to already you have to know what type of security it will be, right? And you also have to know how much money you are going to raise, because there are exemptions. For example, if you're raising below 2.5 million euros, then you don't have to register the prospectus at all. And if you're only if your investors will be let's say accredited investors, but they are investing more than 100K for each investor, then you also don't have to register your prospectus. So of course, the most complex way to do an STO is to do it for the retail investor, like the ICOs are done, because there are very very steep regulations on the protection of these investors. So yeah, but the process, it's pretty much the same as you would write the white paper. You just have to register it with the authorities, and you have to, for example, publish it with the nationally covered newspaper once you start your offering. So there are these small differences, but well, small differences in theory. But of course, you have to the work that goes into that is a lot more demanding. But it's doable, and I have met several times with the Estonian Financial Supervision Authority, and they have a kind of given their blessing to the fact that we can tokenize companies, and we can make assets, tokenized assets from the shares of the companies. Not all types of companies, but still, and that's that's kind of half of the victory, because if you can't do that, then you can't make the security token offering out of Estonia. So I don't know that much about other countries. I know a bit about United States regulations, and I know it's very complex as well. But yeah, I think I think it will be a big market, and I think I hope at least that Estonia will take more steps to make it simpler as well. because it's important to have let's say to compete, to have these companies in Estonia.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, and thank you very much for sharing your insights and your experience. Many companies are still trying to save their money by avoiding to hire a legal firm, and they're trying to consult with some friends they know who've been involved in ICOs to read different topics on the medias and blogs and forums. And by the end of the day, they still get in a very risky position. So, especially for a security token, and as you said, that there have not been too many cases so far which have passed the proper regulation for a security token offering. But as you mentioned, the industry is growing and the market for securities is expanding. Like, and if we take a look at 2017, there was a crazy year for an ICO. Like pretty much any product could raise enough money. And 2018 is a little bit more calm market where we see more platforms and more products. So we see now from our side many companies many ICOs that bring different really technological solutions and where you can use the token as a utility. But we also see a trend of more and more investors looking for security token. Like could we assume that 2019 or 2020 or 2021 would be the year or the era of security tokens? And do you see that from your inquiries, the inquiries you get from customers? How fast is it changing? How fast is the demand for security token is growing?
Yeah, I think it will be, I don't know which year, but I think it will change. And I think the security tokens, they have a lot of kind of potential. It's, some people have said it's a 10 trillion US dollar market, and it has the power to disrupt the whole financial industry. And I believe in that. But there are also a lot of challenges to implement security tokens on a wider scale and make them available for retail investors. Because currently it's to do a security token offering for a retail investor, it means you have to comply with the most strict rules. And it means, to do that, you need to pay like 400, 500K to the lawyers to draft the documentation, at least in the United States. So that's a lot, right? And that and when we think about companies that want to do security token offerings or that have done utility token offerings, then these are small or growing companies that are raising capital, and I think these companies don't have the capabilities to actually comply with current regulations of the securities. So they just don't have money, and they don't have I would say they don't just have the capacity to do that. So there are still a lot of friction and a lot of challenges in that field. And of course, that's why I also say that if there are countries that will simplify it exponentially, then this country can have a lot of businesses there. But I think, 2019 probably is too early, but 2020, most likely, it depends. Regarding inquiries, I would say, it's growing. It's growing, and I would say before it was all inquiries. Let's say for every 10 inquiries, now 3 of them are security tokens, about 2 or 3. Before it was, all utility tokens, but it's growing, and it's also interesting for the investors because these assets are backed, so it's a safer investment, and it's regulated investment, so we have more certainty. But this market, the STO market, it will be a market of enablers, so the platforms that tokenize the companies, the regulated exchanges, because without them you don't have any kind of industry. You can't trade these tokens. So and of course companies that help to market these security tokens and help to raise funds, I think these companies are or these platforms are the ones that will be making the headway. and also the companies that will be very important for the industry, and also the companies that will be making a lot of money. So yeah, I think 2020 is my prediction.
Okay, thank you, Mikk. So yeah, this is a good thing that more regulations are coming in, but what made blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and the ICO so popular as that it's so accessible for everyone. Like pretty much a college student can prepare and launch an ICO if he has a good team of friends. And it's not necessarily has to be a scam ICO. There could be some very interesting technological projects. We've seen some teenagers, developers, bringing such an interesting ideas to market, such interesting ideas to the market. And ICO is a good source for them to get crowdfunded to build the product and to launch it. And the product can be a game changer, right, for an industry. So what do you think from your point of view? Of course, it's good for our business to have more strict regulations, because on one side it wipes away all the scam. On the other hand, it brings more expensive services for enterprises who would be launching security tokens, or large investment firms who would be tokenizing their funds, foundations. But as a side effect, this can make get to lower accessibility for those good, interesting ideas of these people, these developers or marketers who don't have enough capital yet. And then it brings it back again to angel investor and VC investment relations. And as we've seen in the history, not all venture capitalists or angel investors can understand brilliant ideas that can change the market or an industry. So what do you think? Is it more of good that stricter regulations and more expensive compliances are bringing to the market, or there is more harm of that, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would need to go back to that, and that's why I'm very interested in seeing which country simplifies the STOs as well and makes it accessible, because I would, of course, I would rather have less regulations and more projects that are capable of raising capital. But I also think that the problems that the ICO market has, and to keep the trust of the investors, you need to have some regulations, because otherwise it's like a Wild West. And if you get scammed once, you will never invest again. And also because, as I said, there are so many companies coming into this space that don't know, or well, the one thing, if they don't plan to develop a product, but they actually don't know how to do that, and they want to raise a lot of money, and then if you have that a lot of money, you lose the hunger to develop the product, and you also lose the possibility to grow as an entrepreneur, because you don't have to hustle and find those non-traditional solutions to your problems. You can just throw money on it, and it probably won't work out for you. But I would definitely support less regulations, because it's just, the freer the economy, let's say it like that, the more solutions will be on the market. But I also think that the countries, they are very complex social constructs, and you need to have some order in them for, let's say, a country to function. And for that, I also think it's the same for the markets. You need to have some order. You need to have some kind of frameworks for these industries and markets to function properly. Otherwise, I think it can bring more harm if there's no regulation at all, right? And it means that also the good guys will get harmed if there are too many bad guys taking advantage of this crazy situation. And then we're already in to the nature of human being and the psychology that they have. And I think some regulation is needed, but I also think that it has to be as accessible as possible. And that's why I said that it's very important to see which country makes it very easy. So this also brings down the legal costs. So yeah, I mean, well, my point of view is I see myself as an entrepreneur, not you know, a legal counsel or advisor or whatnot. And I have always supported kind of easy way to operate, and I support it for the ICO as well. I think that has been the key for this market to develop. But some regulations are good, definitely, yeah. But if it's too strict, then it won't grow as we want it to grow, yeah.
Yeah, we're totally on the same page on that with you. So thank you for this kind of vision. Mikk, do you think Estonia looks like it could become the place for this kind of regulation, for easier security token regulation, and for making it still accessible for interesting ideas and ICOs?
Yeah, definitely, especially if you compare it to, well, it depends. If you want to compare it to the offshore jurisdictions, then I would say it's too, you know, well, because Estonia is part of the European Union, then we can't have that kind of no regulations like some offshore jurisdictions have. It just won't work. But I think Estonia has a very good kind of platform already for that. And especially when we talk about making it easier, because we have already digitalized most of the key industries of the country, including, you know, the schooling system, public transport, voting, tax returns, and of course the company management. And the more things we can bring online and digitalize, and perhaps even standardize to some extent, right? And have this platform for doing these security tokens, then yes, Estonia has quite a good position for that. But also because I have met with, as I said before, I have met with Estonian Financial Supervision Authority for several times. I also know that we as well have people, you know, that are all for the new technologies, and let's go forward and let's do it. But on the other side, we have people that are very careful, and, you know, they're not very sure whether it's a good thing. So it's something, you know, very hard. The politics is very difficult thing to forecast, because you need regulations for that, and you need easing of some regulations, and I can see that happening. But when, I'm not sure. You know, I don't know. I don't know when it happens, but definitely, because, well, as I said before, we don't have that much to offer. We have to be an attractive business environment as a country to be competitive. So there are talks about that, but how it goes, I can't yet predict.
Yeah, I like that approach of wanting to be attractive country for companies and startups. That's very good. So Mikk, we've gone through security tokens, through what to do, what not to do to have a successful ICO. Maybe there is something special you want to share with us about legal compliance, about like ICO market, or maybe kind of different your ideas for cryptocurrency world, or maybe you know who Satoshi Nakamoto is and you want to share it with us. What would be something you would like to tell us and our viewers?
Yeah, well, from the legal perspective, I would definitely advise to educate yourself first about what needs to be done, and also educate yourself about the possibilities of different countries, because the needs that you have, it may change the best possible location for your ICO or STO as well. So that's for one thing. Regarding crypto markets and projects that want to do an ICO as well, my best recommendation is, you know, spend time with your wife before you start, because when you start, you won't have any time anymore. So I would go with that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or if you want to work in a company that provides services for ICOs, spend time with your wife before you join this kind of company too.
Yeah.
Mikk, thank you very much. That was very insightful. I'm pretty sure we'll have many questions coming in our comments. So we'll be trying to answer those as soon as possible. And yeah, thank you so much for taking good care of all the customers and partners we're sending to you. Everyone is extremely happy to work with you personally and with your company, Comistars. So if there will be any questions, I encourage everyone to leave them in the comment section, or if you need some solutions for legal side of your ICO, we'll put you in touch with Mikk, and he will take really, really good care of you. Thank you very much, Mikk, for being with us. It was a pleasure, as always, to talk to you, and I hope we will soon make a video about how easy it is to set up a company for security token offering today. So I'm looking forward to see this day and to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.